You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And to start our conversation with borders on President Tinubu's new economic model, let's take this background from our correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
According to the Independent Media and Policy Initiative, IMPI, the new economic model deployed by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration is bound to drive the country's GDP higher in 2026 and beyond. The think tank had referenced the general consensus of Nigeria's growth prospects, which it attributed to the economic model adopted by the present administration. It noted while the Nigerian government projected a 4.68% growth in 2026, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry projected a massive 7%, which is 1.5% higher than the Nigerian Economic Summit Group's 5.5% for the year. In a policy statement signed by Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative, Dr. Omoniyi Akinṣiju, it is projected that the economy will hit 5.5% in 2026, higher than the forecast of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF. It was believed that the positive economic growth outlooks by domestic and global institutional players point to an emerging economic paradigm that emphasizes increased production and productivity momentum, foreign exchange stability, disinflation, galvanized foreign direct investment and inflow, and unobstructive regulatory environment anchored in policy-driven economic facilitation. Now, how more are Nigerians perceiving and reacting to President Bola Tinubu's new economic model? Guests in the studio will be discussing more on that shortly.
Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Good Morning Nigeria. Many thanks for Oyeyemi Ajayi for the background report. Now to begin our conversation on President Tinubu's new economic model. Let's bring in our guests, and it's a pleasure to have with us Dr. Omoniyi Akinṣiju, the Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative, and also a financial analyst. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, also here for the conversation is Danjuma Mohammed, a former presidential candidate, Movement for the Restoration and Defense of Democracy, MRDD. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
So Danjuma, it's been a while.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Also, we have a regular here in the studio, and it's Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information at the Mile State. He's also a political analyst. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, those that are watching us.
Okay, let's begin with Mr. Omoniyi Akinṣiju. Give us a breakdown. Let us understand. Give us a holistic look at the Tinubu economic, model from 2023 to now and where we're going from.
Well, I must say that our organization, the Independent Media and Policy Initiative, had plugged into the vision of the current administration right from the first announcement, the first policy announcement. Because for us it was an attraction, because you usually don't have a president make declarative policy announcement on the day of being sworn in. So when the president declared during the course of his being sworn in that subsidy had gone, that was a major attraction for us, because some of us had actually been advocates of the removal of subsidy, and we knew that if that was done as a singular policy effort, it was likely to have, of course, what you call multiplier effect, both positively and of course negatively. And we have realized that a number of leaders over the years had attempted to remove subsidy, and of course the allure of subsidy to the people was quite clear, and that there would be resistance in that removal. So the first policy for this government was to remove subsidy, and we call it a flagship policy. Then I think under 4 weeks, there was the harmonization of the multiple foreign exchange window. That was for us, again, was a major subsidy, policy. Because these two flagship policies are actually, captured in what you call the populist realm, the populist framework of governance. That is where government intervenes with good intention to ameliorate or mitigate possible, difficulties for the people. But we also realize that such interventions are open to abuses and will not usually don't even get to the major supposed beneficiaries of those policies. And over time, we have found there have been a class of people who determined to defend, this old order, as it were. Well, thankfully, we have this president who decided to push this policy, and then from that point in time, we started seeing changes, But of course, associated with that changes, and we have to be truthful, I said, with some form was some form of difficulties, especially in increase in prices leading to inflation and all that. But the truth of the fact is that the policies we have been pushing, we have been administering over time, had been a policy of suppressing prices. Now, in economy, once you suppress price, it means that you are existing in an artificial, environment, and that whenever there is a dislocation, there will be a trigger, and that trigger, of course, will create that pricing crisis. So between June 2023 and perhaps December 2024, we had that crisis of the trigger of prices because of the policies. Now, for us, we have seen how the current administration had managed that crisis, so much that it's obvious that there are mitigation and amelioration of this crisis, as it were. Inflation rate is dropping. There's more quantum of foreign exchange coming into the country. Our buffer, that's the foreign exchange reserve, is increasing. As at the last count, it's about 46 billion. We are seeing the appreciation of the naira, and when you continue to say all this, we are also seeing the fact that Nigeria is being highly rated in terms of economic management by both domestic and global economic institutions, as it were. So for us, what is obvious is that there is this new model. And what's the new model? One, it is moving from the old order to a new order of policy facilitation. So you see a lot of policies, and not just about policies. You see those policies being implemented and at work.
All right, many thanks, Dr. Akinshiju. Just talking about some of the policies initiated by this administration and the model you're talking about, don't you think, critics will say that it has widened the inequality gap, or if you like, it has increased, poverty, across the country? I'd like you to react to that. And of course, talking about the fuel subsidy removal, so far, over 2 years now since, that statement and, of course, the implementation, can you point to projects, that the savings, from the subsidy removal has been able to get for us as a country?
All right, let me start from the last question. Just 2 or 3 days ago, the Office of the Nation's Accountant General declared that a sum of 2.5 trillion had been shared amongst Nigerian states, 36 states plus the FCT, as part of the savings, of the withdrawal of subsidy. Personally, we have not done that. It's different from FAC allocation. When the subsidy was removed, the federal government declared and announced that it was going to establish a saving, for infrastructural savings, and from the savings from from subsidy removal. Now, when you have that kind of situation, it shows a disciplined, a focused, disciplined approach to fiscal management. Many Nigerians don't usually believe when government says it's going to save, because we have a situation where we are always under pressure for money. you know. And then you now have a government that said, we are saving for this. And directly we can now say that this 2.5 trillion over a period of 17 months was actually distributed. We have not seen any state government come out to say, no, we did not collect from these savings, as it were. Then two, we have seen the quantum increase in FAC allocation, you know, between 2023 June, and now. So much that at a point in time, I think sometimes in August, September 2025, the FAC shared up to 2.2 trillion naira. You know, and it was not even, we still had savings of more than 1 trillion naira on that particular occasion. So it means more resources are being freed, you know, for allocation and of course for spending. Then talking about poverty. Poverty had been my area of interest because Nigeria had always been a poverty endemic jurisdiction. In 2012, and that had been the benchmark for me, in 2012, price of a barrel of crude oil was $110. We're producing more than 2.3 million barrels a day. And despite this quantum of resources at our beck and call as a nation, the numbers of Nigerian poor living under $1 at that time was 112 million. So what that tells you is not just that it's not about subsidy, because we had subsidy. It's about management of resources. So if at that time we had one, and it is established, you can Google it. And from that period, it's not that, it grew to that 112 million. Now, yes, we had inflation. When you had increased inflation, naturally, some people will fall under the table, will fall under what you call the Marx and Dixon line, because the resources they have had been eroded. So what quantum of money they had to buy food, to buy other forms of items for their lives, you know, may not be enough. But again, you now also have a situation where there's disinflation. And that is what we have seen now in Nigeria. At the point in time, in December 2024, the inflation rate rose to as high as 34.8%. But now we are talking in the last declaration, I think December, was 15.5%. That is like more than half of what we recorded in December 2024. It also means that so many people would have been automatically circled out of poverty. You know, the numbers of poor would have been reduced by the fact of the reduction in inflation figures, as it were. So, to a large extent, it does mean it is not that we have not experienced or we have not witnessed high or increased in prices, but we have seen the management, you know, of the economic space in such a way that we have seen increase and now we are seeing reduction. So we are no longer talking about inflation; we are talking about disinflation, and food pricing that had been a major headache of the Nigerian jurisdiction, as it were, had become like a lapdog. It was the monster in the room, going as high as 39% in this same December 2024 figure. But now we are seeing it nearing the lower double digits. In the last inflation figure, it was near 11%. You know, so it means you have a government that was working, that was modeling. So the modeling now is that, okay, food security, you know, is perhaps no longer a major challenge for the Nigerian jurisdiction.
Okay, you know, let's give you a break and you know, you feel it down. You know, these economic terms and jargons, you know, most Nigerians listen to day in, day out, and they tell you that we just can't understand these jargons. And, we need to see it on the table. And I like the fact that I call it institutionalized poverty. Since we were growing up, always there was poverty, people getting out of poverty, government tried to get people out of poverty. Now we have more than 100 million Nigerians, you know, in the poverty level. It's quite a serious and scary situation for a country like Nigeria. And Nigerians say they are now poorer than they were before these reforms. And I'd like to ask Mohammed Danjuma, at what point does economic theory, like we've been listening to all the time, give way to human reality?
Yes. The problem we have really is that we try to apply our African approach to economic reality. In economics, naturally, you don't wait until you are impacted personally. But once you see it taking shape, then all you do is to position yourself and take advantage of whatever you're doing in terms of productivity and the kind of get your own impact from it. You see, in economics, you don't wait and say, oh, until I see it on my own table. I will give you an example. The NEL Fund is not only an interventional, administrative action by the president, but also a policy by the regime. NEL Fund has taken a chunk of responsibility out of indigent parents who could not even have money to sponsor their children in the university. My mechanic, some few weeks ago, told me that 2 of his children are in university, one in University of Ilorin, the other in University of Ife, that is Obafemi Awolowo University, that ordinarily he couldn't have been able to pay even for one of these children, but both of them are in these schools because of NEL Fund. Now you will not say that, oh, because I don't have a child that is benefiting from NEL Fund today, oh, nothing is happening. I mean, that is an economic relief. And whether you like it or not, all you need is to sustain that trend. With continuity, more and more Nigerian indigent students will benefit from NEL Fund. That is how it goes. Same thing I want you to recall. Back years before the coming of the APC regime particularly, you had a situation with consistent rise in crude oil price and the dependence of the economy on crude oil, even at the cost of $100 and above, consistently for 3 years. State governments in Nigeria were bankrupt. Many could not pay salaries. Some, for 1 year, could not pay. And that contributed immensely to the multidimensional poverty this government inherited. Even with the bailout.
But there was a backup from the Buhari administration. He gave money to the states.
Exactly. Even with the bailout, and that is where I'm going. Even with the bailout from Buhari, yes. Many of the states could still not meet salary obligations. But today, the states are not only up to date as far as salary was concerned, even the contentious matter of, oh, we cannot pay X amount, we can only pay this amount, is no longer there. Many states, about, as at last count, about 15 or 16 states are paying above national minimum wage. And they do not stop there. They are even paying their own local debts, all because of the humongous rise in FAC allocation, owing to the implementation of these policies. So that is why, you see, even when you try to, a kind of examine poverty in Nigeria based on the projection of World Bank, IMF, and all that, is the one you have to kind of subtly little, because they may not be very much up to date with certain fundamentals in the economy. If today you look at the economy perfectly well, you discover that, yes, we are not there. Yes, but we are very much on our way by the fact that our GDP has proven that there is a surge, there is a growth in productivity.
And inflation has dropped.
Okay.
And inflation has dropped.
Many thanks.
And secondly, the PMI, don't forget, that showed, that is Purchasing Managers Index, that showed significant expansion in industrial activities, is telling you that more people have been employed.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. When you talk about more people have been employed, we want to see the statistics because I don't think the NBS is telling us that we have more people who have been taken out of unemployment. But I'd like to get to Honorable Ahmed Sajo now. I remember when Dr. Akinshuju was speaking, he talked about money being saved, and then you want to ask, if money is being saved, why is more money being borrowed? As of 2024, the debt profile of Nigeria increased. It stood at 144.7 trillion naira. That's approximately $94.2 billion, 2024. And of course, that amount increased in 2025 because there was more borrowing. So you want to ask, there's savings, there's more borrowing. Why? Explain the economics. Or
simple. Nobody borrows money to somebody who has no capacity to pay back. Very simple. If you even have lenders that are willing to lend to you, it indicates that you have capacity to pay back. They don't lend. Look, I'm a retiree. Anytime I go to the bank and apply, they say, look, you're a retiree, you have no steady income, so we will not give you, we will not lend you anything. You know, so lending itself is an indication of economic stability. You don't lend to somebody who does not have the capacity to raise resources to pay. But let me tell you something. I have been privileged, and I say it with a sense of pride and responsibility. I've served as a local government secretary, and I've served at the cabinet of a state government, the subnationals and the municipal. If you really want to know if there is an improvement in the system or there is no improvement, you need to go to the subnational and the municipal to see what is happening. Just 2 or 3 days ago, the Minister of Information made a declaration that 27 states would have collapsed completely if not for these interventions. And I can tell you, when I was in government, in the cabinet, there was a month that our entire allocation was 1.8 billion. Our wage bill was 2.2 billion. This is practical. I was in government. We had to manage. So you're not talking about overhead, you're not talking about capital allocations, you're not talking about anything. Even the wage bill, you cannot pay. Now, micro and macroeconomic stability depends almost entirely on governance stability. If the government itself, if the system, if the policy holders are not stable, they cannot engender stability in the system. And it is the stability of the system that engenders growth. Now, states in this country were not paying salaries. States were having difficulties with, their day-to-day resources available for their day-to-day running. Today, every state in this country, any state that does not pay their staff, should be declared a criminal.
So are the states simply just collecting money to pay salaries or to better the lives of the residents?
I'm coming, my dear. Just take it easy. States are paying salaries. States are clearing backlog of pensions and gratuities.
And accumulated debts.
From contractors. And states are developing. At least if you go to my state, whether you like the governor or not, you know that there are certain things that are happening within the state capital. You don't even have to go anywhere. You will see there is development. We're just talking with my sister here. If you go to Maiduguri now, if you grew up in Maiduguri, you go there now, you will not even find your way. And it's happening all over the country. Now, what we're looking at is there are two issues that are contentious in this country: social inequality and multidimensional poverty. I will tell you, social inequality is a product of, yes, our economic policies, but it's also a product of some of our own social responsibilities as individuals. A person that had refused to be productive, a person that had left his village to the city to come and become a thug for politicians, if he is poor by choice. He is not poor because the system made him poor. We have land in our area that we could go there and be productive. We have trades we could learn and do. We've decided to take drugs and become thugs and then become poor and begin to complain that we are poor. No. Secondly, there are people who are also within us that are very wicked. And I tell you this, there are areas in this country where government converted taxis free of charge to the taxi operators to CNG. And they are buying 3,000 CNG to work for the whole day. But they have not reduced the price of transportation. They have not reduced anything. So in Hausa we say, in ambita barao abita mabif. So when you look at the government and you begin to complain of the government, let us also look at ourselves. Are we doing things that could impact on the lives of our people? Inflation, the prices of foodstuffs are coming down. I tell you, there are people now who are mopping up foodstuffs from our markets to hold. And that is not a healthy business practice. You know it.
That is if they have not learned their lesson, because they lost a lot of money in 2025.
I pray they do.
They lost a lot of money
who holds
in 2025.
so that people can suffer. So what I am saying is that, you know, we believe that some of these policies have effects that, you know, like Chairman Nee said, there are negative and there are positive outcomes from those policies. What we needed to do was to consolidate on the positive and find the fulcrum from where we can stand to mitigate the negative.
Okay.
But mitigating the negative should not be left to government alone, especially government at national level. Subnational government, municipal government, don't forget that the Tinubu administration had insisted that subnationals should collect their monies directly. If they collect their monies directly, do we have a system of citizen oversight to ensure that these monies that they are receiving directly is applied to better the lives of the citizens? I think we need to look at it holistically, not just from the perspective of the fact that government has done this, government has done this. We must all, at all levels, government at the federal level, government at the subnational level, government at municipal level, and citizens themselves must commit to improving our lives, improving our standard of living, and of course, the ruling elite, to which some of us here belong, must begin to reconstruct our mindset and be a little bit more compassionate to those that do not have, and reduce our display of affluence. It's one of the reasons why we think there is social inequality.
I don't think that can be reduced because, you know, every Nigerian sees, you know, the way affluence is displayed by politicians, and everybody wants to be politicians.
It's not just politicians. Yeah. In some instances, honestly, we're just blaming politicians for something that I know of people who are not politicians. I know public civil servants. I know sundry contractors and business people. I know people who import substandard goods in this country.
Like I was talking to one person.
Somebody
from China.
Goes all the way to China,
yes, to
or
get
to India to say,
and bring to Nigeria.
Manufacture substandard for me so that I can make more profit in Nigeria.
It is we the people
and
that
he makes the profit and begins to display, and the next thing you say, politicians, government, and we are all culpable. We are all in these things. We all must come together to exit the situation we are in. But these policies, I must say, they are bold, they are courageous, and a typical politician will be more concerned with populist approach to say, how can I be more popular with the people? But it takes a statesman to take courageous decisions that are not popular but are valuable to the system.
And that was exactly what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did.
I believe so.
There's no... Mr. Nia Akinsuju, you know, we talked about the exchange rate unification, which was meant to stabilize, actually, the Naira. And instead, volatility sort of worsened. But we thank God towards the end of this year, the naira has been appreciating against the dollar. But at the same time, government is saying that foreign direct investment is needed. Our president just came back from Turkey, and and there were a lot of agreements that were signed. Yesterday we had the Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation here in the studio, and a lot of agreements were signed on behalf of Nigeria. Like Ahmed Sajo said, it is when your stability is seen by the outside world that you are giving money as a loan to. But this economic model has also affected us as human beings in Nigeria, because the dollar going beyond 1,000, 1,700, we are suffering. The rent has increased because landlords are saying, we are suffering too, so you need to suffer. So Nigerians are looking at it as, yes, this model is there, it's going to work. We all know it's going to work, but it's going to take time. But at the end of the day, it's still the common man on the street that feels the effect of this reform. So all these agreements that have been signed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu with other countries, coming on board to say Nigeria is now ready for business, how does it reflect?
It's reflecting in the fact that Nigeria is ready for business. Okay. Is it even contemplating the fact that these policies would take time for them to crystallize? I don't want to agree, that one. Two, also marshalling the fact that we have more poor Nigerians now than we had before the policies. I think it's also not appropriate. Because again, what we have generally, when it comes to poverty head count, is an incapacitation. It's the NBS that should be doing poverty head count for us, Standard of Living Index. But we have the World Poverty Clock. It's not even remotely related with the World Bank. That does the estimation.
So are you saying we've gone below the 100 million?
Oh, we have gone below
the 100 million
if
poverty.
If a head count is done today, it's clear that would have gone below the 100. Now, why I am saying that, in 2024, between December and March 2025, that's the 2024 financial years for companies, you had more than 50 listed companies, and I'm using listed companies because those are the companies you can track on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, went under, including the big names, the massive names, Dangote, Boa, MTN, Nesco, call it. Most of them lost hugely, apparently as a first sign or indicator of the application of that policy. But by 2025, both of them are back into profits.
So stated.
The quantum, the volume of profit is 2 times what they were earning pre-2024. So what that tells you is that you now have a healthy private sector. It's as simple as that. That's an indicator to measure if the economy was doing fine.
What about MSMEs? None of the small businesses you're given. Have they improved?
The small businesses are being incentivized. That is why we are talking about the new model. At the time, the old model was taxing small businesses, was not encouraging small businesses. But the small businesses now, the government is now saying through its new tax law, that even if you have up to 100 million turnover, not even profit, turnover, and you have your asset is up to 200 and something million, you are exempted from taxation. Now that tells you that automatically you are saving 30%, which is the tax, which is the company income tax. So you are saving 30%, and it does mean that you are now enabled to reinvest that 30% that you should have paid to government. So for us, that's a major incentive. And don't also forget the fact that it's part of the new models. These are the policies we are saying would drive GDP rebound. Even beyond the 4.4% the IMF was talking about. The government itself is cautious. to say that, no, our own projection is about 4.6. But we are saying that we are seeing so many things, so many policies in that space. The new tax law, exempting and incentivizing companies, already we are saying the companies are in revival. The Nigerian stock exchange is in revival. It talked about the purchasing managers index now. Throughout the whole of last year, for about 14 months consecutively, we saw increases in the PMI. When you see increases in the PMI, it's an indication of growth. When we forecast that inflation rate was going to fall to below 15%, by the end of the year 2025, we used the PMI as a predictive analysis to make that projection. We made that projection way back in April 2025, because we saw how the PMI was performing, the returns on the PMI. Any PMI, a purchasing managers index, any PMI that is above 50% shows that the economy is balanced. The Nigerian PMI was not just above 50%, it was actually moving up. So much that by November it was as high as 57%.
But what about the purchasing power of Nigerians?
Yes, so the purchasing power is also explained by the inflation. What erodes your purchasing power is your inflation. So if inflation moved by 20% or 34%, as we had in December 2024, it does mean that relatively the 10,000 naira you have had been eroded by, if you do some regression analysis, had been eroded by more than 1,000 plus naira. So which means the 10,000 naira could no longer buy 10,000 naira worth of goods. It could only buy, you have the same 10,000 naira, but the value is actually less than 10,000 naira.
Good?
Sorry?
Is that good?
No. So, but now you also have a management of that headache, of that challenge, that had reduced it from 34.8% in December 2024 to 15.5%. So that tells you again that purchasing power is being improved. If we are all talking about figures. And of course, I've had occasions to engage economists, as it were, on programs like this. And they were saying, no, it's not because of the whatever of, and I said, no. The other reality is that I survey the markets. I make it my responsibility to go to the markets. And I told you here, the foundation of my discussion is that over so many years, since 1973 precisely, we had artificially suppressed pricing. And because we have suppressed pricing, we have not allowed the market to determine prices. And by not doing that too, we are also suppressing our economic growth. Because if you don't allow pricing, entrepreneurs will not come into the space. Pricing is a mechanism for entrepreneurship, for production. If the price is not appropriate, nobody would come and build refineries in Nigeria.
Anyways, away from pricing, Dr. Akinshiju, you talked about taxation and the fact that, MSMEs are benefiting from this new tax reform. But, if you speak to manufacturers, if you like small and medium-scale enterprises, they'll tell you that one of the critical need is power, and that is still in short supply. So of course that's a critical area, if we really want to shore up the economy. But I'll pause you quickly. Let's get to Mr. Danjuma Mohammed now. Yes, of course, I'll come back to that so that you respond to that. These policies are great, like Dr. Akinshiju has said, and of course, Honorable Ahmed Sajo. That does not mean that other policies by previous administrations have also not been laudable. But one of the major issues that have stopped many administrations from succeeding is corruption. Would you say that without visible anti-corruption enforcement, these policies will continue to work long term? Well, if it's working short term, well, according to what Dr. Akinshiju says. But speak to us in that regard.
Yes, as far as corruption is concerned, I want to tell you that this government has shown proven capacity in prosecuting corruption cases. If you go down the memory lane, you will agree with me that there hasn't been any time within our short history of institutional, battle against corruption, since the creation of AFCC particularly, that you recorded this quantum of forfeitures, legal forfeiture of corruptly, acquired assets, for government, like under this regime. But having said that also, what you should look at is, you look at what are those factors that propels, that incentivizes corruption in the society, and how well has this government tackled it. You see, the president has, saw all these himself before he came on board with projects like not only NEL Fund that I just mentioned, but projects like Credit Corp. These are avenues that are created to simply reduce the pressure of acquisition on the individual. These want to acquire a property of 25 million naira, whereas you don't even have 1 million naira earning of your own, and you have no access of how to get a loan to acquire this. And these are the kind of pressure that genuinely, a kind of propel certain individuals to go into, to want to corruptly enrich themselves with public trust. But this government is providing, or rather has provided, certain, kind of a cushioning effect to that, guaranteeing access to credit. Credit Corp ensures that you do not wait until when you are rich enough to a kind of acquire, rich enough to earn, or rather to.
How many Nigerians have benefited from this credit card?
This is where the issue is. You see, it doesn't. This is economy. It doesn't just happen at once and goes around at the same time, but it goes gradually and permeates the entire membrane. That is why I said the African, perception of, it must get to me. Say sorry,
the dog must eat in the plate
before he agrees that there's ceremony in his house, even though he sees people, rejoicing and all that. It doesn't work in the economy, particularly not the type of economy that is being created today. Not this model of economy where you have this, this policy-driven economic facilitation. You don't see that way. What you see here is once an enabling environment is created and is emerging, all you need is to sustain that policy and sustain, of course, the stability of government. That's political stability. It will go round. The Europe you see today, where this access to credit is being easily facilitated, did not start one day. It started gradually, and it was institutionalized, sustained, for it to get to where it is today. So I can assure you that it has just started. It's still less than 2 years, I want to believe, Credit Corp. And more and more Nigerians are accessing credit to buy cars, to buy houses, and lot of, so with that, you reduce, there is this reduction in at least unwilling individuals, the urge to want to steal government money. But certainly the kind of corruption and the kind of corruption that it kind of led to the well, let me say the demise or ineffectivity of previous policies under previous regime, you cannot find under this regime, because there is, in addition to that, there has been this decentralization of government involvement. You do not have, you now have a private sector driven economy, such that in most there are positions in government that are no longer as lucrative as they used to be in the past, because these powers, these should I say the encumbrances, the authorities, this concentration of authorities in such offices are no longer there. So the private sector takes charge of it.
For instance, the private sector takes charge of it.
Like, excuse me, before you come,
okay. Take
the refinery, for instance. Today you have a private refinery running the show in Nigeria. Then how concerned are you about the amount of money that goes for turnaround maintenance or refinery from government homes? That corruption has.
We have a refinery that.
Are you sure that corruption has ended? Just to quickly respond, just today in the papers, we saw that some workers in some refineries are asking for their salaries and
They have not been paid.
entitlements.
And when you talk about private refinery, we see a volatility of prices. Just like some weeks ago, the price of petrol came down to 700 plus now, and they said the NNPC has taken it to 800 plus.
That's competition.
Yeah, that is competition. I like the fact that there's competition, but we all know that the savings from the subsidy removal is being injected into the economy. But still, you know, how are we sure, like Ian said, corruption, you know, are not being wasted in recycled corruption? Because we have not seen concrete accountability. Any government that loses power, of course, most of the time they come, they charge them with stealing money, corruption, everything. This is just starting. Gifts, gifts. Yeah, this, no, let me land with my question. This is just starting, and we're talking about recycled corruption now. You know, you won't see it until maybe after this administration is going. So, where is the accountability?
Yes. The accountability is very simple. Citizens' oversight. When you were talking about inflation, rise of prices, you're talking about landlords increasing rent. It's only in Nigeria.
1,000%.
Wait, it's only in Nigeria that somebody will build a house 40 years ago and still increase the price of the rent on that house because the price of cement has gone up. It's crazy. But we live with it.
The excuse they give is that they have to take care of themselves and their families with that investment. So imagine someone who has to buy fuel now at the current rate.
But
he needs the rent to be able to live up.
Band A, I spend almost 40,000 every month on electricity. How much is my salary? It is not easy. And then you have to buy fuel. Then you have to save money for rent, which has been, you know, my rent has been, you know, increased 1,000%. And there was no argument. If you're not going to pay, pack out. So what kind of policies are there to protect Nigerians from this kind of, I call them scavengers and vultures hanging over our head to take the little that government has given us?
I agree with you totally that we need stronger policies to protect citizens from the ones you refer to as scavengers. I may not refer to them as that. I did not. You did. But they are actually scavenging on the ordinary citizen. Now, what government can do, which is what government has done, is to come up with hard policies that will reverse the downward trend in the economy so that there will be some level of enablement for private sector particularly to pick up the process because it's more sustainable. If you notice, all public enterprises in the country have almost nearly collapsed. It's in fact the grace of God that partially privatized agencies like our dear NTA still survives the economy. Because in truth, it is the private sector that should drive the economy, while the public sector, you know, controls the policies that drive the activities of the private sector. This is how it is. Government is an enabler. It's the enablement that the government is supposed to do. Now, in the process of doing all this, I agree with you totally that we need policies that will protect the citizens. And I trust from what is available, you know, that if there are policy options, well thought out policy options, you see, majority of us in Nigeria lament and fold our arms. We do not prefer solutions. I wish we could sit down and articulate solutions as citizens of this country, that these are the policies that are needed to protect. I can tell you that whether we are in an election year or not election year, a government that had the courage to take hard decisions with respect to the subsidy regime, with respect to the dollar regime, could also take much harder decisions to protect its own citizens. The NEL fund is a decision that was taken to protect ordinary people. The credit core is a decision that was taken to protect ordinary people, poor people. I believe very sincerely that if we articulate a policy that will protect our citizens from the activities of Shylocks, the ones you refer to in certain terms, that yes, that's what they are, if we can only get to take policy decisions, and this is where I'm advising anybody that has access to influencing policy in government to come up with policies that would protect citizens from the activities of fellow citizens
as well as government,
who do not see the good in what the government is doing, but rather what comes to them as individuals. Like I gave you an example. Somebody gets, somebody buys fuel at maybe 875 in his car, and he buys 10,000 naira fuel, which is about 8,000 something, and he operates maybe for just one day. Another person takes 3,000 and goes to buy CNG, and he operates for 3 days. But the person with the CNG may even charge more than the person that is using fuel. So look at it this way.
Anyways,
is it government? Is it government?
Not government.
Us, the people.
Of course,
exactly.
not government.
The person that added your rent by 1,000%, when the inflation has dropped to 15%, is he being fair?
But when you want to talk about
That's
the
why
CNG,
we need policies.
When you want to talk about the CNG, of course, those who have also converted will give you the issues of non-availability of service stations, and all of that has also been a challenge as to why that policy has not, worked fully. But, let's just leave that hanging. I'd like our viewers to be part of this conversation. I mean, they feel the impact of these policies. They can, of course, send us their questions, comments, and, of course, would read them. Our guest would also respond to them. I'd like to get to Dr. Akinshiju now. You wanted to respond to the power issue, but, of course, I want to ask you about what metrics can be used to measure the success, of all these policies. How can Nigerians really track progress? Just so that it is not a talk thing. It's something, like a former governor would say, something you can eye mark. It's not just ear mark, and all of that. We follow these policies and the direction that this administration is headed.
Thank you. Can I also indulge, I think your indulgence to also respond to the corruption thing. The truth of the matter is corruption is opportunism. When any individual is presented with an opportunity to do more than he could or to go beyond his remit in the office, he is likely, to be corrupted. Again, policy. It is not the stick approach, policy approach. And in the removal of subsidy alone, if we are talking about metrics, we don't have that now. We have not measured, the reduction or otherwise of corruption. But we can assume that to a large extent, there had been a reduction in corruption in that aspect of our national economy. Because at the point in time, some people says, the environment of refined oil. Refined products were imported, PMS, were imported with Nigerian Federation money into Nigeria. A small class of people grabbed that opportunity, to expropriate the products. And beyond that, don't forget the scandal, the huge scandal of 2014-2015, when people were using outdated, expired allocation paper to bring in fuel, and they were not bringing in fuel at all. Corruption. The harmonization of the...
What about the round tripping too?
All that. It was a huge corruption ecosystem. So by removing that subsidy, because the whole idea was for subsidy and the bridging claim. We had layers of possible opportunities for corruption. One was I took my product from Lagos to Sokoto, and it cost me 750,000. Government will have to refund me 550,000 out of that. And in actual fact, the person had not taken anything from anywhere. So by removing that subsidy, you have saved the country. It's not just about saving. You have actually denied people access to corrupt themselves. And the same thing with harmonization of the foreign exchange window. We are talking about when the policy was effected. Yes, the rate jumped to as high as 1,900. But the truth was that if before the removal, and it was 460 officially, who was assessing that 460 officially? It was people who were close to government. So if you had just 1 million allocated to you, 1 million allocated to you at 460 naira, you took it to the black market and sold for 750 without doing anything. 200 plus or 300 plus naira times 1 million in the comfort of your home. That's corruption. So by harmonizing it, there was no access. And now because of that particular policy, you had more inflow, more foreign exchange inflow into the country because of that one particular. So it's either you are talking about portfolio investment, you are talking about foreign direct investment and all that. It's principally because of that one policy. And that's why we are saying this policy is going to enhance production. Now, going into your last question about metrics.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is, we are saying already that there will be a reduction in the numbers of poor in Nigeria. We are also saying, and if by God's grace, the MBS is capacitated enough to conduct possible employment rates in this country. We are saying that employment rate would have improved. Because the problem with Nigeria before 2023 was that our economy, even when we had the buoyancy between 2002 and 2013, 2014, thereabout, our economy was not producing jobs in the private sector. And people were depending on jobs in government. Do you have nexus? Do you have connection? Do you know commissioner? Do you know minister? Do you know this? To get jobs.
Has that stopped?
Well, I wouldn't know.
Okay, I'll pause you. I'll pause you because we need to go for a break.
I'm saying
we need to go for a break, Dr. Akinshiju. Of course, when we come back, you respond to that, and of course, more questions.
We'll be right
some
back.
people would say we still do not know the exact quantity of crude oil produced, of course, so that's also another area that needs to be blocked. But we'll take a break. When we come back, the conversation continues, and of course, we'll get to read your messages. Don't go anywhere. All right, many thanks for staying with us. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And our guests are still very much with us. Of course, we'll get into the messages shortly, but we'll let Dr. Akinshiju land on his thoughts.
It's 36 minutes now. Can we take the messages in here so that they'll be able to respond as they respond to our questions also at the same time?
No, I think Dr. Akinshiju was to land on a particular thought, so we'll just give him that opportunity and then read all the messages.
In 1 minute, please.
All right.
We have to manage time here.
What we are saying is that by the next time the NBS comes out with employment level, it's likely the rate of unemployment would have reduced further. We are also seeing the fact that there's more consumption activities in the space. People are buying things.
Are we manufacturing more?
We are manufacturing more.
That is it.
We are exporting more. It's policy. The fact of the real value, our naira has shown real value, and because it has shown real value, it is now competing in the immediate neighborhood, in our West African region, in the African region, even globally. So much now that compared to other times in our history, more goods are leaving Nigeria. In fact, the happiest thing is that before now, when vessels come into Nigeria, they bring things from abroad.
Empty.
And they leave empty. Now they are occupied.
Now they live with goods.
They live with something from Nigeria.
Yeah, I see.
So it shows that, and that is why even in the last, before recently, sometime most of last year, price of crude oil, was falling. And we also saw that, yes, despite the constraint of revenue, we're earning more from non-oil exports. You know, the truth of the matter is it's not the government that was exporting those non-oil exporters. It's private sector. And of course, if the private operators in the private sectors were doing that, it translates to mean that we're earning more dollar revenue from private sector. And because we're also earning more dollar revenue, it also means that the private sector operator were expanding. When they expand, it means that they were employing more people.
So you mean that we're all, prior to 2023, we're all living in a bubble? Believing that everything was okay?
We're living in a sham. We were living in a world that was not us. And that was why we had always had persistently more than 45% of our population. Historically, it is not just a recent thing. Since the 80s, more than 45% of Nigerian population had always been poor, living under the poverty line.
And you said that's going to change. All right, let's see what the messages say. This one is from Muhammad Awal Musa Afamai in Kano. It says the 2026 tax regime aims to promote special equity by reducing the headquarters effect, where only states with company headquarters benefit. How can some local governments in Nigeria leverage on this revenue distribution to fund community-led infrastructure projects? Another one says, good morning. Please, this program about the Tinubu new economic model. The man that spoke about NEL Fund, my son applied in University of Duse in Jigawa State. The school authority refused to accept it. I was disappointed. It should be asked why schools or some schools are not accepting NEL Fund and all the benefits that it brings. And one says, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Truly, there's a fall in food prices, particularly in grains and gari. What is the government doing to restock the government silos in order to encourage the farmers in the next seasons?
Okay, let me quickly go through the ones I have. Let me say, hi, good morning, Benedicta from Cross River State. I'm here to comment on the NEL Fund student loan scheme. Our schools are not listed and a lot of students are in dire need of the free loans. It's not free, you have to pay back, don't forget that. So please let the supposed institutions look into it. And we have here, he said, another one said, we're our own enemies most of the time. When subsidy was removed, fuel prices rose to over 1,500 naira. Transportation rose over 1,000%. Now that the fuel has reduced, transportation has not come down even for 1%. Government need to compete with the private transporters to bring down the transportation. We need an emergency in this sector, especially in the intra-city rail system. And Ayuba Dedan from Gombe said, good morning, talking about new economic policy. I commend government effort on wide policy focus on improving the nation's economy. Truth be told, Nigerians who are the beneficiary of these policies are struggling with poverty. A clear example is the End Bad Governance protest in 2024. In another way, people are not benefiting from this reform. I think government should check its policy and ensure that citizens are carried along in the transformation agenda. And from Kayode Busari from Lagos said, good morning, Nigeria. Many thanks to NTA for today's topic of discussion. The challenges with us as a nation is not really with the economic model of any succeeding government, but rather with the people. We, the people, are fantastically corrupted. Until governments adopt the principle and philosophy of patriotism, transparency and accountability, entrenching strong institutions in the polity, deliberate and constructive planning and policy initiatives by the government. The above are the only way for us as a nation, and may God bless Nigeria. Kayode Busari from Lagos. Amen.
Yes, I want to say, first, you can see that from the messages, NEL Fund is a very, very popular policy of government. But there are certain conditions to it. One, NEL Fund cannot be accessed by a newly admitted student to the university. You must have been documented, fully documented, as a bona fide student of a university before NEL Fund accepts you. And because NEL Fund takes, they have the record, biodata, and information of every student from 200 levels in public universities and higher institutions. So I want to believe, let him go back, ask his child, maybe the child is just 100 level, let the child get to 200 level. As at that time, I think the normal documentation must have been completed. So let him apply from.
But this one said their school.
Yes, their school.
They are not listed.
Yes, is that school recognized by NUC? Because NEL Fund will not deal with an institution that is not recognized by NUC. NEL Fund is operating under a legislated law.
That's the Nigerian University Commission.
No private university is listed.
And no private university is listed.
Okay.
Exactly.
Because you can't be indigent. Okay. You can't be indigent and put your child in a private university. It's not true. It's the people that send their children to public universities that are actually in need of help. If I can take my child to a private university and pay 5 million naira per annum, why do I need to be supported?
Okay, Ahmed Saju, I'm going to ask you this critical question as we're going to wrap up this program. We are entering an electioneering a campaign year, and we all know in Nigeria that most times when campaign starts, governance is sort of put on the on the table, and then campaigns and politicians are all out there. So how can we always say that the subnationals should key into the policies of the federal government? Because in Nigeria we tend to find out that most things happen in the center, and the subnationals at times don't key in these reforms. When are the subnationals going to key in and begin to implement their own model in the states, so that to generate,
Let's understand one thing. When you are standing beside a giant, even if you refuse to be concerned by the presence of a giant near you, you will be affected by the shadow of the giant on you. The federal government is the umbrella for every government, in the country, subnationals and municipal. Now, the policies are of the federal government, and they are robbing off the subnationals and municipals positively. But if the subnationals and the municipals refuse to extend the benefits to the people, now at this point, election or no election, we need to raise the consciousness of the people to begin to undertake citizens' oversight. And from the questions that we have received on this program, the citizens are eager to participate in oversighting the government. Remember, President Tinubu told governors at one of their visits to his house that, look, you go and enjoy the stability of having more money, while I receive all the insults of people not being satisfied.
But is that the way it should be?
Yes.
Is that the way it should be?
No, it's not. It's not. But you know why it is happening like that? Because there is no citizens' oversight. We're all fixated by the fact that, every complaint are directed at the federal government. So people have taken their eyes off the municipal, off the subnational, and now we need to start. We have a responsibility, NTA and all of us have a responsibility to raise the consciousness of our citizens, to begin to ask questions at every level. And once we begin to ask questions at every level, we begin to do what is called citizens' oversight on our leadership. Our National Assembly members who come to Abuja and may probably collect money and refuse to go back to our homes, we must call them and ask them to account for whatever they are receiving. So let the governance template be a holistic one.
All right, fantastic. Many thanks, Honorable Ahmed Saju. Of course, we're going to get to you because we're about rounding off the conversation. We'd like to hear your final thoughts, but I'll just let Dr. Akinshiju respond to this question about, he talked about the subnationals. I mean, how can we get them to, move away from recurrent spending and political patronage and, deal with capital projects and, if you like, the betterment of the residents of their state? That's one. And then two, in this political model, in this economic model, many people would have loved to see a reduction in the cost of governance. Do you see that happening, in a way of actually making the country move forward, because, the cost of governance is still very high?
Well, I have heard people talk about cost of governance. I've not had anybody told me the exact cost that that we are talking about. So every year we see the budget, we see the percentage, allocation that goes to recurrent, and we assume that should be the cost of governance. But we are also seeing the quantum increase in allocation to capital, in the proposed 2026 budget, for instance. So for me, I think the metrics, as you put it, is to understand, is to properly situate figures, and then be worried thereafter. But I also need to extend this discussion to the fact that we have always been bothered about governments. Government had been the major factory for the Nigerian economy. So at the federal level, at the state level, at the local government level. And that is why our economy had always been constrained. So for me, it's a joyful thing to see that the private sector is being galvanized. Because that's the most important aspect of an economy, And in doing that too, for a private sector environment to be galvanized, it also means that appropriate corporate governance is being applied at that level. Because it is when you have a buoyant private sector-led economy that you are sure of increase in production, you are sure of increase in employment, that you are sure of better convenience in life, And I am seeing that in the Nigerian economy. About 2 days ago, I was told that Coca-Cola was going to invest $1 billion in the Nigerian economy. I know that about 3 months ago, PZ declared, 4 months ago, PLC declared it was leaving the Nigerian economy. And then 2 months after, it came back and said, no, we are not going again.
Staying.
We are in. And they also promised another like $500 million investments. And we have seen how different companies are acquiring more plants, equipment, and all that. It shows the new confidence. These are the indications of the policies working. It shows new confidence in the economy. Now, there is little the federal state government can do in terms of driving the economy. What would depend on government would be infrastructure to facilitate the growth of the economy. Good roads, like you said, power, But even at that power, the New World Order is changing the preferences. We are seeing that the cost of power per unit from solar is even getting cheaper than our grid. But for us to be able to exploit it, you need a very vibrant private sector, So for me, the focus should be what are the policies impacting the Nigerian private sector, because that is our hope for increased production. That's our hope for more employment. And
yes.
Employment today is the headache of the Nigerian economy.
And all that boils down to security also, not just power. Because without security, none of these policies can work.
Danjuma Mohammed.
So, Danjuma Mohammed.
Yes, very quickly. I want to say that we must understand that constitutionally, the federal government is under obligation to share national revenue with subnationals. But there is no aspect of the Constitution that empowers the federal government to oversight the subnationals. So if you begin to expect that the impact of these reforms and all that should come only from the federal government, then you are not taking yourself very seriously. Like my colleague said, you see, the citizen insight must be taken very seriously. And this has to go, I think the media has a role to play here. Because when you begin to ask people, what are you expecting from president? You are encouraging him to continue in that myopia of his military, cycle. This cycle we carry from the military regimes, where the head of state, directs the governor and local government.
If you say there's no constitutional backing, shouldn't there be oversight? I agree. But politically,
yes.
Does the president, not have the power, to...
No. The best president can do is what my colleague here just said. Simply to appeal.
It's a democracy.
It's a democracy. It's a free democracy. That is the truth. It's a free democracy. So the president has no power to impeach any governor. So all he will tell the governors, please, use this money judiciously. That is where it ends. But had it been the president has that kind of oversight, like he has constitutionally on his ministers, on the governors, of course he can now begin to hold the president accountable. But the whole idea of the entire reform is simply to do one thing, to create wealth. because it was the paucity of wealth that created this multidimensional poverty. Now, the entire reform, the sweeping reform under this regime, is simply to bring money, make money available for development to be delivered. And in delivering development, I mean, the subnationals are independent on their own. It is not for the president to say you must do this or you must do that. Okay. That is one. Secondly, I'm coming to the metrics. Okay. Let's summarize this. You see, the crux of the new model of this economy is the shift. That is the truth. The shift from this monolithic oil-dependent economy to a diversified economy. The policies are not only pro-wealth creation, pro-employment generation, but also they are, this pro-diversification. So look at what the World IMF and World Bank, the mistakes they do, they depend on their usual traditional metrics of evaluating the performance of Nigeria economy, which is dependent on crude oil prices. They just look at the crude oil price, will it fall, will it rise? They use that to measure.
And not other...
That was why they failed in most of their projections in the past. And IMP actually got it right. Because what is happening with these policies of Tinubu administration is that you now have the non-oil sector performing, and they are now trying to begin to compete.
Okay, I have to pause. Okay, Amisaju, in 30 seconds. Yeah, going forward towards the end of 2027, where do you see the economy?
I think there are certain windows that we must insist that our subnationals and even municipals must take. For example, the Tinubu government had signed the law that liberalized power generation and distribution. Subnationals can produce their power stations. If you go to a country just like Cameroon, which is very close to us here, there are areas, communities where off-grid solar power plants have been established, and they have 24 hours power. So we need to begin to look at, be more innovative in the manner, in our approach to governance, not just necessarily...
Thank you very much.
Sajo, thank you so much, former Commissioner for Information, Adamawa State. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And Njuma Mohammed, former presidential candidate, Movement for the Restoration and Defense of Democracy, Merod, Abuja Studio. Thank you so much, as always, for coming. It's been a while. And Dr. Nia Kinsuju, Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative and Financial Analyst. As always, we appreciate your contribution.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Away from the jargons. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you so much for watching. Another interesting topic will be up tomorrow. I am Joma Yusuf. You have a great day.
I'm Anne Ray John. Live locked on the NTA.